Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Green. I am the Managing Director for Morgan Stanley, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's session, Demystifying AI and Finding Your Place. We're fortunate to have with us Jordan Morrow, a true pioneer in the field of data and AI, often referred to as the godfather of data literacy. Jordan has been at the forefront of helping organizations across the globe, including the United Nations, understand and build data literacy. As a Senior Vice President of Data and AI Transformation at Agile One, and the founder of Bowdy Data, he's transforming how businesses leverage data for strategic advantage. His work is so impactful that it's no surprise he's also the author of 3 acclaimed books, with a 4th on the way this December. On top of all that, Jordan is an ultra-marathon runner and a father of 5, embodying perseverance and dedication in every aspect of his life. Personally, as a leader at Morgan Stanley, I'm acutely aware of the need to harness the power of data within our own walls to drive innovation and stay ahead of the competitive landscape. That's why Jordan's insights today are so relevant, not just for our organization, but for all of us here who are striving to lead in a data-driven world. In his presentation, Jordan will demystify the real world of AI and data literacy, guiding us on how to find our place in this rapidly evolving world. He'll share actionable ideas on how to build a data literate culture that empowers decision-making and fosters innovation. Please welcome Jordan Morrow.
Okay, I have to ask, Michael, how did you write that? He's a good author, right? How'd you do it?
You're not going to do this to me, are you?
I am. Go.
Well, we spent, what was it, 3 full sessions, an hour apiece over the last month and a half or so, and I learned about you deeply and ordered your book. That's
Well, I appreciate that. Royalties would be coming. We'll go to lunch. Now, be honest. How did you actually write it?
All right. So, truth be told, what I did was I took his bio. He gave me a basic bio of basic data about his life, and he sent me his presentation. So I cheated a little bit. I had OpenAI. I took 5 pictures. One of them was his bio. The other 4 were the first 4 slides you'll see in his deck today. And I asked kindly, gently, if OpenAI would give me a 45-second introductory speech. I also told it who I was, and just take his bio, put it in written format, make it 45 seconds, and then glean information from the presentation and work it into the introduction. So, since you
AI,
put me out there, that's what I did.
Yeah, AI is pretty cool, and he sent that to me without telling me what he had done. And it was accurate. Even the nickname that I did not give myself, I'll make sure everybody knows I don't call myself the godfather of anything. That nickname was given to me. I have a second nickname that I like, which is called Chief Nerd Officer. And I wear that one with pride. I am very nerdy. You're going to find that out today. But by show of hands, we're going to start off. We'll kick it off. I'll introduce myself a little bit more. How many of you like awkward silence? Does anybody like awkward silence? If you say yes, I know you're lying, but I'm going to interact with you during this conversation. Now, I know they're recording it, so I'll try and make it so Mike is not running around giving the mic to everyone. We'll do that at the very end, but I like to interact with you, so you're not just being lectured to. But let's jump in, introduce myself a little bit more. I've got a lot of gray hair now. My kids will let you know that, but I have been in the data and analytics space basically my entire career, going back to where I started at American Express to where I am now, which is essentially a Chief Data and AI Officer. And you're going to hear me say today there is way too much hype around AI. And so that's the whole point of this discussion that I want to have with you today is what's real, what is not real, and maybe more importantly, where do individuals and organizations truly build out use cases that provide value to their organization or your life, and then you can apply those. And we'll give you some tips and tricks. I'll probably talk about a lot of different books during this presentation. You don't have to memorize every book. You can connect with me, and I'll send you an email with all of them. But we're going to start off with a funny image. Who knows who that gentleman is right there? Brent Spiner, all right, for all you old timers like myself, he played a character in Star Trek, and he went by the name Data. And so I am like, dude, my 3 books start off with B Data something. So I went and met him and had him sign it. And I want to clarify one point of thing right off the bat. Brent Spiner, who played the character Data, said to Jordan, it's data, not data. Brent Spiner. Now, I don't care if you call it data. Not going to be that nitpicky. That doesn't matter. Like, this is just funny. It's a nice intro. What matters is, how are we applying data and AI to business decisions? That's it. By show of hands, how many of you are not from Indiana that are here today? I'm not. What app do you think I would utilize to figure out what to pack to come to a place like Indiana? Any guesses? The weather app, right? How many of you know how sophisticated the models are behind weather? They're unbelievably sophisticated, even though we get frustrated with weather people when they say it's going to rain and it's sunny, or it's supposed to be sunny and it rains. Did you know that means you are data literate how many of you have ever used a weather app? So you're already data literate, right? Data literacy is the field I help invent. And I don't like when people say, well, we're teaching people to be data literate, because they're not. What matters is an understanding, a collective understanding of how do we apply these things in our lives. So let's talk about it. I'm going to talk about what I would consider the real world of AI, right? Generative AI is just one piece of a larger puzzle. Does anybody know when the term AI, was coined? What year? Any guesses? You can yell them out at me and I'll repeat them. 19-something, by the way. I heard 1956. So AI has been around forever. But what generative AI did is make it extremely consumable to do stuff. Like Mike used generative AI to do the introduction. I'm writing a couple of pieces for a company. I used generative AI to help me frame those pieces, right? So we can do this over and over. But let's talk about some real world use cases of this. So I want to talk about the data. I went too far. The data that is now existent in the world. So the prediction that you see up there came out in, I believe, 2022. So we are before the onslaught of generative AI and ChatGPT. The prediction was that by next year, the annual data sphere, which is all the data in the world, would be 180 zettabytes plus worth of data. That's 21 zeros. You might have seen the number I put up there. Nowadays, we're producing 100 zettabytes per day. We went from thinking this entire number would consume all the data in the world in 1 year. Now we're producing 100 zettabytes per day. But I'm going to point something out, right? People get caught up on the amount of data that we're producing. Amount doesn't matter. What matters is how are we harnessing this? So when you think about all the AI presentations that you have going on today, right? I'm traveling to South Africa in a couple weeks where I'll be teaching around these topics again. I guarantee AI is going to be a big topic at that event. It will be nonstop. But what we have to do is get beyond the hype, and there is a ton of it. Show of hands, how many of you think there's a lot of hype around AI right now? You're 100% correct. A lot of companies are investing in it, and they are not getting the ROI they thought they would. And it's not because the AI is not a great tool. It's because it is not being utilized correctly. So let's talk about this. This is the Gartner hype cycle. We don't need to go into too many details on this. But if you think about it, here we are, a hype cycle to show what's going to happen. You have innovation, peak of inflated expectations, trough of disillusionment. Generative AI is right there. So we've hit this peak of excitement and all of this, and now people are like, what in the world? Like, we're not seeing this correctly. What is happening? Because then what ends up happening is we go to slope of enlightenment. So we get past this hype, we get past our frustration, and we start to figure it out. Well, I hope today we'll get you started a little faster than having to wait on this. The one that is very interesting to me, and we can talk after about this one, you can't read it maybe, but it's quantum AI. And if anybody wants to know what quantum is, we'll talk after, because the computing power that is going to bring to the world, and it's already here, it's probably just not cheap yet, is going to blow apart anything we've ever known. And so we have to get in our mindset of how do we use this appropriately. Oh, there we go. So let's talk a little bit about what this is supposed to do. Global GDP rate, $15.7 trillion growth. AI market expected to grow by 20-fold. 88% of non-users are unclear how generative AI will impact their life. I mean, there's a bunch of hype, but there's also a bunch of cynicism. And guess what the media can do? The media will talk about negative stories. Do you know why? Our brains process those more effectively, if you will, than they do the positive stories. We latch onto it. Like, how many of you like true crime anything? True crime, my wife is all over. Podcasts, documentaries, all that. That is kind of this negative story, but it intrigues us, right? And so clickbait in the AI space is rampant. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do with this. What can you do to think about AI better? Well, one of the things that I want us to really develop is the mindset that we need. I say become a change-resilient individual. Okay, how can you become indispensable in your own life and in the businesses that you're doing, in college, or whatever it is that you're taking? The number one thing is mindset, right? Sam Altman, everybody know who Sam Altman is? Founder, CEO, OpenAI. Sam Altman travels the world at times meeting with governments to talk to them about what to do when AGI becomes real. AGI is when AI is us. It has equated to the human. There's speculation it might already be there, but products are not being released because it's an election year. OpenAI has said we're not releasing everything because we're in an election year. And I am actually kind of proud that they're doing that because I'd rather have it more fair and all of that. Number two, to be change and AI resilient, adapt and be agile. And agile is not a play on words with my company, but it really is, it matters. Iteration is the third one. Now, what I want you to be thinking of when it comes to AI, this is how organizations should design their AI strategy. It's not about how much data and AI you have. It's all about my 4 rights of data and AI. It's the right data and AI at the right time for the right objective with the right literacy, i.e. the right skill set. These companies that are not finding success with AI and data right now, again, a lot of times what happens is the technology gets blamed, and I'm not saying blame the human. What I'm saying is, show of hands, how many of you went to school for a background or degree in data or AI? Not one person has raised their hand. But every organization is investing in this, right? So the moment we do not meet up with these 4 rights, we get to this point where the success we are hoping for within data and AI hits a massive roadblock. So then we buy a new tool, we think that's going to solve it. It doesn't. Then we buy a new tool, we think that, when in reality it boils down to the individual, the leadership understanding these pieces. Now, one key thing to understand, there is no easy button around this. It takes time. Like, I got hired into the company I'm in right now February 1st, and I'm very grateful I have a leader that understands this is about a 3 or 4 year process to get us where we want to go. They've got good data foundations, but to get where we need to go, it takes a lot of investment from time, people, and money, and to do it the right way so we're not backtracking. Now, from that perspective, let's talk about the hype. The reality around AI right now, and you'll see it, every event I'm going to, AI is the breadwinner, right? I was at an event in June in Chicago, over 20,000 attendees, I believe, at that one. 28 if you count the virtual, about 22 in person. It was an HR, human resources event. One of the top topics, AI, right? And how do we hire for the right skills? How do we build it correctly? How do we harness it in HR? So what we want to make sure that we're doing is we're picking appropriate use cases. If you're walking away from here with anything on your mind from an AI perspective, it would be that. Where can AI be utilized to augment the human, not supersede the human? So like Mike did. Mike sat there and said, all right, generative AI, let's see what you could do, and it gave a good introduction. That's a productivity enhancement. If I'm writing workshops, I'm known as the data literacy guy. I'm still using generative AI to build outlines. I could put in there what company I'm doing the workshop for, what is the audience I'm working with, what's the size of the company, what's their data maturity, and I say, create me an outline. But the key is then I, as the human, am augmenting the AI with my thoughts, right? How many of you have heard of the case of the attorney who got disbarred, I believe, because they quoted cases from AI that did not exist? At least one case that they quoted, and I believe that guy got disbarred. So we got to make sure we're doing it right. Now, there is a hype out there right now that I am actually okay with. By show of hands, how many of you have heard of hallucinations that come about from generative AI? Now, I want you honest on this question. If you raised your hand, how many of you worry about hallucinations from AI? I'm not sure I believe all those that kept their hands down, but we'll do that. Hallucinations are a good thing, right? This is showing you where the model might be broken. It's showing you how so large language models, all they are doing is building you a prediction off of the data that they're referencing. So that prediction might be a hallucination. What I find fascinating is, do you know who hallucinates with data more than anyone? Humans, right? Just watch politics for a day and watch how much hallucination is going on with data. We sit here, and I think because it's a technology, we attack it versus understanding what the model is doing, and so we iterate on it. So don't worry about hallucinations. Just reprompt it and see what comes up from it. Now, let me talk, and I'll pull this one up pretty quick, because one of the things, I don't need to get into the technical on this, but when we think about what AI and data are trying to do, is bring intelligence to drive decision and outcomes. This is what happens in what you could call a good data and AI-driven train. We source all the zettabytes worth of data. Analytics brings the data to life. We then get insight information, and a key term from artificial intelligence is we get intelligence, and then we look to get decisions and outcomes. And that is driven by a human and the technology. So if you're fearful in any way that the human needs to be replaced, don't be. Become indispensable. There's a great book out there by Mustafa Suleyman called The Coming Wave. Has anyone ever heard of Mustafa Suleyman? You probably have, and you just don't know it. How many of you have heard of the company DeepMind? Who bought DeepMind? Google. Guess who founded or was one of the founders of DeepMind? Mustafa Suleyman. Guess who he works for now? I think he's already there. Microsoft. Now, I'm actually very happy with him at Microsoft. That book, The Coming Wave, really talks about what wave of evolution is coming from AI technology. And Mustafa has a very real, practical way of looking at it, because he understands it's going to drive impacts in the world we haven't even thought of. And so coming at it from this perspective, when we think about the AI and what it is doing, it's being driven by this. Now, one of the things that AI does is it drives analytics. It drives insight. How many of you have ever heard the term, there are 4 levels of analytics? How many of you knew there were 4 levels of analytics? Oh, okay, wonderful. This is what my 3rd book is about. We're going to use an analogy to illuminate that you actually know all about the 4 levels, but we've just got to frame our mindset around it a little differently. How many of you have ever visited a doctor? All right, you want to see how a doctor uses the 4 levels of analytics? And this is exactly what you should be doing from a decision-making perspective and a business perspective. You go to a doctor, and the doctor says, you're sick, shuts the door, leaves the room, and never returns. How many of you are going back to that doctor? If you say yes, let's talk after. Now, what did that doctor do? He did a description. He or she did a descriptive analytic. They described what is occurring. A good doctor stays around and says, you're sick, here is why. That doctor then just gave a diagnostic analytic, gave you a diagnosis. Then the doctor says, if you do this, you can get better. You are now in the predictive analytics side. And sometimes you're given a prescription to help solve what is ever going on. That's a prescriptive analytic, what you should do. So you're all familiar with it, and this is why when we say demystifying AI and finding your place, it's finding these channels of area where you're already familiar with it and it's already a part of what you do. You just might not realize it. The doctor's a good example. Me, when I run an ultra marathon, you better believe at times I've got to go through all 4 levels of this to understand maybe why a race didn't go the way that I wanted, whatever the case may be. Now we look at it from an organizational perspective, and guess where organizations are stuck? We build a lot of dashboards, don't we? A lot of dashboards, a lot of reports, and it ends there. I worked in financial services. Mike does. Do you have too many dashboards at time? Lots of dashboards. Guess where companies are investing a lot of their money? Predictive and prescriptive. That's your AI technology. Guess what level is ignored more often than any other? Diagnostic analytics, and it is the most important level of analytic you can get good at because it is the why level. Guess what you can utilize to help you figure out the why? Generative AI. Have you ever thought of that? And prompting AI to say, why is this occurring? I'm seeing this in my data, I'm seeing this in my life, what is happening? And you allow it to do it. So when we're thinking about where is my place in AI, we want to be thinking about how can I get good at finding scenarios where AI will help my productivity, whether it's in the business setting or whether it's in our personal lives. My son, for example, my oldest boy, he's turning 15 soon, he uses my generative AI subscription to build workouts. Right? So he's like, I need a good upper body workout. So he goes in, types in what he wants to do. It creates a good workout for him. You can use it to create recipes. In the business setting, I want you to be thinking about your job. Where do you feel pain? Where do you feel like you have these mundane tasks that you have to do over and over again? That's where you find augmentation through generative AI. All right, so there we go. Let's talk a little bit about building your own personal strategy or organizational strategy. And we're going to start off, I'm not going to read this whole thing, that would be boring. But when we think about data and AI literacy, let me give you the definition of what data literacy is. Data literacy is the ability to read, work with, analyze, and communicate with data. Notice what term is not in there. That became a very hyped up data term. Data scientist. Is anyone in here an official data scientist? David, you might be. Harvard, and now I've got to preempt this. How many of you went to Harvard? Didn't anyone go to Harvard? Because I'm about to rip into Harvard and I don't want to offend anyone. Back in October 2012, Harvard said the sexiest job of the 21st century is the data scientist. Guess what companies did? Exactly what they're doing with AI right now. They went out and they hired data scientists, i.e. they went out and purchased AI and thought the solution was there. That's not the case. It doesn't work that way. AI literacy is basically giving individuals and organizations and in totality the ability to prompt, evaluate, and make smart decisions with AI. That's all it is, right? So I want you to think about yourselves, and I'm going to give you tips and tricks on how to do it better. But how are you with prompting AI? How comfortable are you evaluating the prompt response? And how comfortable are you then making a decision off of what the prompt gave you? We're all pretty good at prompting, I can bet. But do we know how to evaluate it? You know what one of the easiest ways to evaluate your prompt is? And it's kind of funny to say this. Go back and Google the response. Right? If it's quoting something, Google it. Isn't that interesting? You're now going backwards to a search engine to see if it's valid what the AI drove for you. Highly recommend doing that. The other thing you have to get really, really good at is figuring out how do you implement a decision off of something it gave you. That's the three pillars. Again, prompt, evaluate, make a decision. That's how you figure out your place with AI. Anyone who sits there and says in a 45-minute session, I can teach you everything about AI is fooling themselves. AI takes time, it takes all that. Instead, you're figuring out your place within it, and hopefully we're demystifying it. Now, real quick, here's some different types of AI, just so you can wrap your mind around it. Remember, generative AI came out in November 2022, widespread. It had been out for a while, but it became widespread with OpenAI and ChatGPT then. Well, that's more of this narrow or weak AI. It's narrow. It's amazing what it does if you understand large language models, but at the same time, it's very narrow in its scope. The next level of AI that should be here, the prediction, I think, in 2023 or 2022 was that maybe in 30 years we might get artificial general intelligence. The prediction is now between 2025 and 2027. This is where the AI reaches our level, okay? ACI, this is one that comes from Mustafa and that book, The Coming Wave. ACI is artificial capable intelligence. What are my use cases? And where are the AI capabilities that can help me do it? So if I'm in sales, what's sales? You got sales AI right there, right? If I'm on marketing, can it produce content for me? If I'm in data and analytics and I want to do data science, can it do the coding for me? But remember, just because it can do the coding and give you a model, you then have to understand what to do with that model. So the data science side still is necessary so someone can apply the results. For example, how many of you know what a Markov chain analysis is? You all use them, you just might not know it, right? Smart text was a Markov chain analysis. If I say the word probability, how many of you know what the word probability means? Much easier. That's what a Markov chain is. And so when we think about all what the AI is doing, don't think about all these cool things it may do. What capabilities can it do? And do I understand what to do with those capabilities to make smarter decisions? Next one down, machine learning has been around a very long time. And super AI, think of this as superhuman, Superman, Superwoman. We're going beyond us at that point, which I'm super excited about. I've got 2 family members now battling cancer. Imagine creating customized cancer treatments because we can go through trillions of calculations in a matter of seconds, a minute, versus taking years to develop it. Right? This is the power of it. Imagine solving hunger because the power of quantum computing allows us to go through perfecting farming. I think it's John Deere, and we all know John Deere, the tractor, very advanced when it comes to AI and data. Might not be something you think about, but they are. Well, we'll talk in a minute, but I want you to be thinking about questions on these. But again, where we want to focus, right there. What AI capabilities matter to me, and how can I use them to go forward? Now, one key thing, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but my slides should be a part of the Rally app. If they're not, you can always connect with me, and I'll give them to you. No issue with that. This is what I call a due diligence checklist. If you're ever wondering how to test AI for yourself or for your organization, it takes due diligence. This is why I think companies have failed to see the results that they thought they would with AI, because the amount of due diligence done up front may have been weak. We have to understand its impact, its investment, the downstream impacts, and that includes humans. And we have to understand all of this, like defining the right success and roadmap, engaging the stakeholders, evaluating all the potential impacts. I am a die-hard rugby fan. I coach rugby. I played rugby. I'm a South Africa Springbok fan. But one of the best books I have ever read for business comes from the New Zealand All Blacks. Have people heard of the New Zealand All Blacks? Very famous for doing the haka. As much as it pains me, the best rugby program ever. But in this book, it's called Legacy by James Kerr, one of the best business books I've ever read. It's following the All Blacks and applying their principles to business. And he talks about the structure that you have around strategy. The weaker your structure, the weaker your strategy is going to go. The better your structure, the stronger your structure, the better your strategy can go. When we think about AI, and whether you're using it individually or as an organization, how good is your strategy? And if it's full of buzzwords, I highly recommend we connect, because if it's full of buzzwords, it's probably a poor strategy. All a data and AI strategy is how are you using data and AI to complete your business strategy? I just wrote your strategy. It's that simple. But we have to have structure around it. And again, these are just a few things to do to help you move towards your goals and objectives when it comes to data and AI. Now, for your personal literacy, think of this little Venn diagram here. Up at the top is study. I read and study constantly. I even bought a book on the way to this because I'm from Utah in the mountains. On my flight over, I bought a book that I started studying in my room yesterday, a new one by Nate Silver. Does anyone know who Nate Silver is? Nate Silver did 538.com and was seen as like this oracle when it came to prediction. His first book I recommend is called The Signal and the Noise. And this latest book is called On the Edge, but I think On the Edge. You better be prepared. It's huge, so I'm not very far in it yet. But the first thing, in order for you to succeed, you'll see at the bottom, data and AI literacy, is study needs to become your best friend. Connect with me and I will give you a ton of resources on this. If you're a leader, it's your responsibility to stay on top of trends. If you're a consumer of data and AI, it's understanding how to utilize it. If you're a data and AI professional like an engineer, it's your job to understand both those areas, right? Study matters. Number 2, make sure you are experimenting with this stuff ongoing. I had a coworker of mine say, I think she asked me, how did you generate an image with ChatGPT? Super simple, generate this image for me. Now go off and experiment. Go off and try it. Test it. Then the third pillar would be responsible use. Right now, there was a session, I believe, just before this one at that stage over there about ethics and bias. AI is driven by what? Data. And sometimes people think AI is infallible. What a horrible thing to think, because garbage in, garbage out. The data is built by humans a lot of times. And if that human who built it had bias in the data, it's going to feed your AI. So make sure you're creating responsible use. And right in the middle of this, by doing this, hopefully what you find is your personal growth to utilize these tools and technologies, to understand them better and to grow in them. Now, oh, well, I had an image. Apparently I didn't know. Now, let's talk about what I'm going to call an AI enablement, the tri-power. Let's talk about how nerdy I am. How many of you remember the video game Zelda? Right? In Zelda, there was something called the Triforce. I literally stole that term and created, this one's the tri-power. I've got one called the tri-data, but I do not use the same image. I would lose in a lawsuit to Nintendo, so I don't do it. But I want you to imagine sitting on a stool that has 3 legs. How many of you want to sit on a stool that has 2 of those legs broken? Anybody? 1 leg broken. Maybe we'd sit on that one, but we're going to be balancing, right? We want all 3 legs of that stool strong, so it's right here. For AI enablement to work, it starts off with problem solving. We're using AI to help us problem solve, using AI to help us make a decision. Then we execute on that decision. We evaluate the results of the decision. We now problem solve again. We then drive a decision again. We then execute again, and it becomes this living, breathing thing in an organization. I'm going to be very clear. Purchasing AI is not an AI strategy. Purchasing AI is not going to guarantee success. It has to be designed right, and you want AI enablement flowing through the organization where it becomes a part of problem solving. It is a part of decision making, and it is a part of execution. All right, last section. I've got just under 12 minutes, and then maybe if we have time for questions, we'll take them. If not, I'll stay after if anybody has some. But let's talk about enabling your own personal and organizational, and I'm going to bring all of these up, your own personal and organizational ecosystem around data and AI. One of the first things you can do as an organization and an individual is become more and more fluent in the language of data and AI. Now, I'm not telling you to go learn all the terminology around statistics. I don't need you to know what a RAG model is within a large language model. I don't need you to know that. I need you to be able to converse with people around these topics and feeling confident and comfortable. But that doesn't mean, I have 5 children. Watching them learn language, right? They learn as they grow. Organizationally and individually, we need to do the same thing. The second pillar and the 5th pillar I'm going to combine together. Iteration and learn fast. I apologize if any of you use the slogan fail fast. I hate it. The reason is organizations don't truly buy into it. How many of you work for a company that if you worked on a 6-month project that failed, you'd get a big bonus? You should, because along the way, if you're designing things right, you will have learning points and check-in for all 6 months of that. It's not necessarily that the project was bad, but you've learned along the way what not to do next. So I want you to iterate things. It's not a set and forget it, and learn fast, right? Being a Springbok fan and a South Africa fan, one of my heroes is by far Nelson Mandela. And Nelson Mandela had a quote that goes something like this: I never lose, I either win or learn. That should be your mentality around this. My prompts are never wrong, I'm learning. My decisions off of AI are not wrong, I'm learning. Make it an ongoing thing. Third pillar down, create AI DNA in yourself and in your organization. What I mean by that is AI becomes a partner to you, another tool that you use. Back in 2007, what launched that is now synonymous with our lives? Anybody? Michael was just using one. You've got one in your hand. The iPhone, right? How many of us use a flip phone where you have to press the letter or number 1 3 times to get to the letter C on a text? Anybody still doing that? It seems beautiful at times to go back to a much simpler time, right? But the iPhone is now, or smartphones, not just iPhone, is now a part of our DNA. We use these things regularly. That's what I want you to view AI as, is this partner with you that you are using regularly, that you are finding use cases to utilize and make intelligent decisions with. Number 4, find your community. You started here. If you're sitting by people you know and work with, there's a community. Ask people questions all the time. Study was that top bubble in my Venn diagram. That doesn't just mean study books and things like that. Learn from mentors. If you need a mentor, connect with me on LinkedIn. I mentor, and I'm happy to do it at no charge. I am such a massive believer in what these tools and technologies can do if we do it right. And then the final one at the bottom is skepticism. The world is creating cynicism. We need to be data skeptics, AI skeptics. It just means question everything. All right, let me put up some pillars for you when it comes to data and AI learning. Number 1, make sure you structure your ongoing skill enhancement. If you're in university, they do it for you, right? As soon as we leave university, for whatever reason, maybe it's because we're so happy. I can still distinctly remember walking out on the last day of my master's, right? That image is imprinted in my mind. But for whatever reason, we then enter our jobs and we forget how to structure our learning. So make sure you do that. Make sure you're changing and adaptable. Generative AI might have started in 2022, at least becoming worldwide. Things are moving at a pace now that it's just going to get faster, especially with quantum computing. Pillar number 3, grasp a solid understanding of business principles. Data and AI are principles, but unless they're applied against the business, what good are they? Number 4, master your communication skills. If I sit here and tell you the number 1 skill that'll make you successful in your career, it's communication, above all else. Number 5, your interpersonal skills. Project management, leadership, communication is one of those. Master those. And then number 6, seek out mentors and guidance, right? Find people who have done what you're looking to do so you don't have to repeat the errors. Now, I'm going to talk about my 3 C's of AI literacy. I have 5 children. How many questions do you think I get on a daily basis? Several thousand. Now, my children know I'm the guy who says never stop asking questions, even though I tell them to shut up at times, okay? We as adults, as soon as we hit the workforce, we forget to ask questions. We just take our job, we just do what we're supposed to do, and we don't do it. I work a lot with the US Army. Even there, we're doing cultural shifts. You're not supposed to question a general. But I remember I was teaching a general, and I think it was her direct team, and a colonel raised his hand and said, "General, we're not supposed to question things." And it was the general who answered, and she was like, "You've got to change your mindset. We're not telling you to question orders. We're telling you to question data." If you work in an organization, raise a hands. How many of you are comfortable questioning your CEO? We've got a few. Do it all the time. It doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. Now, the flip of this is I need every single one of you to be comfortable having your work questioned. I was on a call just this morning where my work was called into massive question, and I said, you know what? If it's not hitting the mark that you're looking for, I'm sorry, and then I'm going to separate from it. I said, that's fine. I'm not offended if you didn't like what I built. It was a content for a course that I was going to be teaching. You have your goals, you have your objectives. If you did not like it, no sweat off me. I'm not here to try and please everybody. I'm here to do my job. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. Second bullet point on here. How many of you think you're creative? All of you should be raising your hand. AI needs creativity in your prompts, in whatever you're doing with it. There was a longitudinal study. I will not go through all the details of it, but I think 1,600 children at age 5 were tested for a genius level of creativity. 98% of them hit it. At age 31, 200,000 adults were tested for a genius level of creativity, and 2% hit it. Children are the perfect data and AI detectives. I hope we learn from them. And then number 3, oh my goodness, I don't think it goes without saying, or it does go without saying, that the world struggles with critical thinking right now. There's a great book out there called Stolen Focus by Johan Hari. Teenagers can focus on one task for 90 seconds. That's it. Now, we chuckle at that. I've got 3 teenagers. Adults are 3 minutes. So when we chuckle at teenagers, us adults aren't much better. So we need to block our calendars, we need to shut our computers, turn our phones off, and we need to critically think more. Let AI and data come to you, block your time, and then just start thinking of ideas. Right? It's like I've got one of my kids, he always has a headphone. He loves music, so I can't get too hard on that. But the brain needs free time. There's another book, see, I told you I'm going to be starting recommending books. Another book out there called Deep Work by Cal Newport. Has anybody ever read it? The brain has a capacity for a certain amount of hours of deep work a day, and it's only 4. But I would argue hardly anybody in this planet gets 4 hours of deep work a day because we're so distracted, we're so busy. Shut everything off and critically think. This right here are your 3 C's of AI literacy. And the final thing is I want to make sure that you don't forget, and I have a 5-step plan that I'll show after this that'll help you get going with all this. Don't forget you matter. Your background, your gut feel, your intuition, all of that matters. Do you know where that comes from? A lot of it is personal data. We just don't call it data. We call it intuition. Well, that intuition was probably based off of experience or something else, and it becomes a gut feel. And that's fine. Just combine it with the data and AI. All right. Oh, this one got a little screwed up there, so I'll read through it. To become more AI-enabled or data-enabled, here's my 5-step thing, and you can use this for so many different goal-setting things. Number 1, the first thing you should do is determine what outcome you are trying to solve. From a business perspective, your outcomes a lot of times are already developed by senior leadership, and then they cascade down through the organization. So we know what the outcome is. The outcome could then be, how do I use data or AI to solve this? Number 2 is you build a strategy and make sure it is a structured strategy. It has steps to get where you're going and what you're doing. Number 3, arm yourself with the right tools and technology. Invest in yourself. If you want to have better AI, invest in the tools. Spend a few bucks, right? It's so funny. We will spend money on certain things, and then we will squibble over $20 or $30 for a ChatGPT license. I promise I'm spending more money on caffeine in a month than that. Right? And so it becomes this whole balance between it. The 4th thing to do is train yourself appropriately. What skills do you need personally to get there? You don't know? You can connect with me and ask me. And number 5, make sure you have the right environment and culture to help you succeed. Personally, for me, I love to be up 4 or 5 a.m. Why? Well, with 5 kids, days get busy. So I work remotely. I might be reading my book in the morning. I go for drives to listen to books and podcasts. So I work remotely, so I get to go drive and do things. Might get my workout in, all those things. So there they are. Set your outcome, build the strategy, arm yourself with tools and technology, train yourself, set your culture. If you do this, AI is not this intimidating thing anymore. It becomes a practical thing, and you're making yourself indispensable, not only to your organization, but to your life. These trends are changing so much. So if we stay on top of these things, we become more powerful. So with that, I saved you having to walk around all over, Michael. I've got like 1 minute here, so we'll do questions after. Oh, sorry, it's in white, so it's hard to see. I am open. I'm an open book. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I already had, I think, 1 or 2 people reach out to me from yesterday that I met who I'm going to help mentor some. Reach out to me. I'm happy to help. There are my books, Be Data Literate, Be Data Driven, Be Data Analytical. My 4th book comes out, and by the way, do not buy Be Data Literate till next month or order 2nd edition, because the 2nd edition comes out next month with AI included in it. So with that, I'll say thank you. I've got 30 seconds left until I get beeped out of here, so I appreciate it. I hope you have fun at the conference. Now go get food, because you just sat in here during your lunch. Thank you.